Hi everyone, welcome to my workshop. Today I'm going to run through what I do to weather a clone helmet. In this case we've got a Shocktrooper helmet. Now everything I'm going to use, airbrush. This is an eye water, but you can use pretty much anything. For years I've used the cheap ones off eBay and they do a great job too. I have some FW inks, black and burnt umber. That's the only two colours I'm going to use. I have two riffler files. One is a triangular style of one is like a half round. A little green scouring pad, some 1500 grit sandpaper and some water. And last thing is just a couple of blue paper shop towels, but any kind of kitchen towel or anything, paper towel will work just fine. So I'll get set up here. The first thing I'm going to do is use my files. I'm going to use the half round. I'm just going to mark up the edges. And it won't be a lot. I'm not really trying to take a lot of paint off at this point. I'm just giving the weathering some areas to grip into, and you'll see that later on. You can see where I'm taking the red off, that is actually coming off a little bit. But on the white, you're not really seeing anything, that's fine. I'm just concentrating on the edges. Edges being the areas which are most likely to take a knock. It's much more likely that you're going to get scratches here, for instance, than in here. Simply because unless you hit quite an uneven piece of ground or something, there's not going to be anything getting to there before it hits here or here. That's done. I'm going to take the triangular file. I don't know if you can see that. No. But I'm going to take a couple of large chunks. Out of the paint in a couple of areas. And I will fill that later with the airbrush. I don't want to do a lot of damage all over it because as the layers that we're going to do build up, it can look like the guy should be dead. He shouldn't have survived this battle that he's just been through. I tend to take the tip off my airbrush just because it reduces some of the spattering that you can get. Even with the expensive airbrushes, you still get it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run down here, also in these strikes here. what I'm going to do is take my paper towel. You can see that's quite heavy. I'm just going to wipe it away. You can assume that this trooper has hopefully looked after his equipment. He's tried to clean it. But of course there's some areas that are harder to get to than others. And you can see, even though this is just freshly applied ink, it's actually quite difficult to get it out of all the creases. And so you could assume that that would be the same case for any dirt or battle scoring, that kind of thing. So we've got it pretty heavy still in here. We don't necessarily want it that heavy. So again, with the green scarring pad, I'm going to go in and just knock that back. Hopefully leaving some rough edges again. You don't want to take too much away, but you also don't want to leave too much in there. After that, move on to the other areas where you might see dirt buildup. So I'm going to run through here. Just as soon as that's applied, wipe it out. And the amount of pressure you use with your cloth will determine exactly how much comes out of there. If you take too much out, like I feel like I've probably taken a little bit too much out here, just reapply. After a while you get a feel for, if you move the cloth straight down, you're probably going to take a lot out. If you move it across, like that, you're probably going to take a lot less. And then move on to the other side. Then I'm going to move on to the back. And just do exactly the same. Fill any of the lines where you might get a congregation of dirt. Wipe it out. So now we've got one helmet. The next step I'm going to do is give it more of an all-over coat. And so rather than concentrating on individual areas, I'm just going to take the airbrush and spray everywhere. Again, wipe it down. And you can see that those areas that we hit with the file earlier on are picking up little bits of the black ink in them. And that's why you didn't need to scrape right through the paint the first time. This bit here has actually gone a lot heavier than I would like. I'm not going to do anything about it now though. We're going to fix that later on. Now I'm just going to keep going around and do the rest of the helmet. Now, once we've got that initial all-over coat done, I'm going to take my files again and start applying some damage to the red sections. Nothing major, just enough so that it doesn't look quite as pristine. I'm not going for any particular effect. At all costs you want to avoid your damage looking symmetrical. It should look as natural as possible. That's one of the reasons I don't like one of the other techniques of weathering, which is before you spray the red, you can apply a little oil or Vaseline or something like that. And so the paint will cover it, but it won't really stick. And so when the red dries, you just kind of wipe it off and you have this quite clean looking smear underneath. But that's not how damage happens to a helmet. And so it looks okay. If that's how you like doing it, go for it. Certainly give it a try and see if you like doing it like that. This is how I like doing it. I feel I get the best results this way. I'm going to leave that there. I think that looks pretty good on the front. I'm going to take a few bits off back here. Actually, I'm going to switch files as well. Try and remember when you're applying the damage as well where it's actually likely to happen. For instance, if you're imagining the damage coming from the front, you're unlikely to get any damage in here because that would have to come from a different direction. It's not to say that you can't have damage in here, just make it a lot less severe in here because it's only ever minimally going to be exposed to any kind of fire or opportunities for it to be hit by anything. Along with doing the big damage as well, don't be afraid to give it just a few little scratches. Not everything is going to leave a big mark. It's not always going to be a big impact. And so, along with these bigger scuffs, like these, you can just flick your file over it, or sandpaper. Sandpaper's fine too. And just get these tiny little wear marks that aren't even, they're almost just creating a much lighter red than they are actually leaving a white mark. That's more or less everything. What I'm going to do now is move over to the burnt umber and create a little bit of a brown tint to it. Burnt umber, the only place I'm really going to detail is around the ears on both sides. I'm not going to go over these parts, I'm just going to give it a general all over coating. So it's going to be exactly the same as with the black. Hopefully you're left with quite a nice rusty, dirty look to it. And do the other side and then give it an all over coat. Doing exactly the same with the burnt umber as I did with the black, probably even lighter. As you wipe it off, you'll find it has a slight yellowish cast to it. If you don't like that, first of all, don't worry about it because we're going to knock that back in just a few minutes. But you can always stop with just the black if that's the look that you like or you're going for. So the last steps for me, I'm going to hit a couple of these places where, if you remember at the start, we dug out some chunks of paint. I'm going to go in there with some burnt umber. So those are going to look like scorch marks. Then I'm going to take my sandpaper. I've got 1500 grit here. You can adjust that up or down depending on how much of this that you want to take off. I found 1500 works pretty well for me. I use it wet. I just lightly take it over the surface, and that will take down a lot of the yellowish cast that you had. If there's any parts that have taken a lot more paint than you expected it to, then it's great for taking that off. So for instance, right here where I said it was a lot darker than I really wanted, I can go in quite strongly with that there. And I'm left with kind of a mottled and worn looking surface rather than something that is just pretty dark and not particularly realistic looking. And you can keep going until you get the look that you want. So I'm going to do that all over. And that's it. The only thing left to rectify, as there often is when you do something like this, is that actually the sandpaper has taken out a little bit more of the scorch marks than I wanted it to, so I'm going to reapply those. Very gentle wipe. And it's ready for final finishing. And here's the finished article. Thank you very much for watching. This has been my very first video. If there is anything that you would like to see in the future, just let me know in the comments. And again, thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you found that you got something out of this.